Hey, everybody, this is Wendy Walker, and I am here with author Nick Petrie, whose latest novel, The Runaway, is out tomorrow. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks so much for having me.
Nick writes the Peter Ash series. He debuted with The Drifter in 2016, and that novel won the Barry Award for Best First Novel, the ITW Thriller Award, and the Peter Ash series has just been a runaway success. First, how did you come up with this amazing character, Peter Ash? He's a war veteran, he has PTSD, and you have him traveling around the country trying to reintegrate himself with civilian life. It's just the perfect character and the perfect setup for an ongoing series.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I was working for a long time as a freelance building inspector. So if you bought a house, you would hire a guy like me to tell you what was wrong with it. And after the surge in Iraq, I had all these clients coming home from war. And I'm interested in politics, and I followed the course of the war, but I was a little embarrassed to realize I really hadn't thought as much as I should have about the lives of these men and women coming home and what life after war was like. That was really where Peter came from, was this idea of somebody coming home after this life-changing, for Peter, it was really a life-shattering experience. And how do you put your life back together again after that?
So let's jump into The Runaway. Tell everybody what this book is about.
Well, it's set in rural Nebraska on a remote gravel road. Our hero, Peter Ash, runs into a young woman named Helene, and her car is broken down. She's vastly pregnant, and she's on the run from her husband, who is an ex-police officer and a very bad man. And Peter, of course, as a gentleman, offers to help. It's part of how Peter works through his trauma, is he tries to help others who are in trouble. And this is actually a real thing that veterans do in life. They sign up for disaster relief. They become police officers, they become firefighters. It's a story of sex and murder and obsession, but it's also a story of strength and resilience and doing what you need to do in order to survive. But it's set in Nebraska for a couple of reasons. One, rural Nebraska is just gorgeous. The Northern Great Plains is absolutely a stunning place. And you feel really small there. The sky is so big. It's, to me, it's such a compelling spot. But there's another story, which is sort of what is happening in rural America. These small towns are getting smaller as people move away to find jobs. The job opportunities are shrinking. There are places where it's 2 or 3 hours to get medical help. It's an hour to a grocery store. So I'm in part, I'm interested in that sort of isolation and what those landscapes, the physical landscapes are like, but also what the emotional landscapes are like for some in places like that. So the goal is to have the place and the story sort of work together.
Well, it really did, because you feel isolated for these characters. So it's really a great setting for this story. What was it like to write in a female point of view for the first time?
But I did not plan for her to have as big of a role as she does. I have written every one of these books. There are little bits from alternate points of view, but Peter is always has sort of the 80% of the book at least is Peter, and in this book it's really 50-50, and it's because Helene, and this is really how the book started. Helene just sort of showed up on the page, and her voice is so strong and was so compelling to me. And I had given her what seemed to me to be pretty interesting problems, which is kind of our job as crime writers, is to put our characters in difficult places. It was a couple chapters, then it was a couple more chapters, then it was a couple more chapters, and I had to really figure out this back and forth structure to accommodate the fact that Helene, in a way, was kind of hijacking the book, in the best of all possible ways. The things that I keep hearing from readers and from critics is about my characters and how the relationships between them, and how they the interplay, and the depth of feeling that you have for them. And that's really my goal. Is I want you to think about these characters long after the book is over. I want you to a thriller is not as thrilling if you don't care about the characters, right? You know this from your own
I
work.
just said that last night. I like to read a book where even if the main characters are flawed, even if they're doing bad things, I need to attach to them emotionally, or the plot is not enough to keep me coming back to that
Yes,
book.
yes. Human beings are complicated, and to reflect some of that on the page is what makes it feel real, and it's what makes you care. There's a trope in crime fiction of sort of the fragile or victim woman, and that drives me nuts. The women that I know are strong, capable people, and so that's, those are the women that I want to show on the page. And there are lots of kinds of strength, and there are lots of ways to cope with difficulty, and Helene is using every means she can possibly find to survive this ordeal that she's going through.
And you've given her such a tragic and traumatic backstory that it just lends itself to the complexity. So Peter has been, in battle and in war, and but she has been in her own war and with her having her own battles. I just found that really interesting and fresh and unique. And so thank you for having that insight into this character.
We all have our challenges, right? None of us are perfect. We're all sort of fighting our way through things, trying to survive our own struggles, and I think that's what makes Peter as a series hero someone who has gained such popularity, is because Peter is struggling to be the best version of himself that he can, and I think that's what we're all working for.
So how did you come to start writing novels?
Oh, well, I've been writing since high school. I wrote 3 novels I couldn't get published. I wrote for 25 years with very little recognition. And then I sort of thought, well, I guess I'm never going to get published. And I'm going to write I'm going to write to get this stuff that's in my head out onto the page. And then I sent off this book that was The Drifter, that got nominated for 5 awards and won 2. And I had no idea that it would ever be published. I just sort of sent my agent an email saying, I don't know if you're still my agent or not. And she said, well, of course I am, and send me the book. And she emailed me 2 days later to say, I think we can sell this book. When writing went from being something that I did because I loved it, even though no one was paying me a nickel, and I thought no one would ever pay me a nickel, and now it's how I pay my mortgage, it's changed my relationship to it pretty profoundly, as I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to remember that this is fun. For all of those writers and aspiring writers out there, like, if you are not having fun, you are not doing it right. And so I'm trying to remember, how much fun this is, and to remember the privilege that I have to be able that I have an audience, and I have a publisher who's waiting for the next book, and to just sort of settle into this version of my life.
Thank you for spending some time with me and letting readers know about your book and your journey. Runaway is out tomorrow. Everyone should go and get it. It's in all formats, available everywhere. And I just wish you all the best with this series, and can't wait to see where Peter Ash goes next.
Oh, thank you so much, Wendy. It's been great to talk with you. This has been great fuel for my day. So I very much appreciate your time and the conversation.